Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pitch to Scale. We are here today talking about changing demands and expectations of customers. And we are here with one of the experts in the matter, is Jen Stirrup. Jen, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to meet you, Daniel. It's been a real ride preparing and getting everything ready for the events today. And I'm really glad to be here. And thank you for being my host.
My pleasure, absolute pleasure. I would like to say a few words about your experience here. Jen is the founder and CEO of Data Relish and one of the most influential data strategists and visionaries in the world today. Jen is a Fortune 100 global speaker and has been named as one of the top 50 global data visionaries, one of the top data scientists to follow on Twitter, and one of the most influential top 50 women in technology worldwide. Jen holds postgraduate degrees in AI and cognitive science. Jen has authored 3 books on data and artificial science, has been featured on CBS Interactive and BBC. So Jen, we are extremely happy to be here and we would love to hear from you. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for that great introduction. So this is a topic I'm particularly passionate about, and it's relevant and meaningful to everybody, because ultimately we're all customers, right? So why is it so hard to understand what customers actually want, given that we're all customers ourselves? So let's have a look at some of the challenges. Well, what do customers want? Well, we're like children, right? We want everything now. And in our world, we want everything good, fast, and cheap. We don't get to pick two. We want the whole thing. So the problem is that everything is coming so easy. We don't have to wait for anything. Now, I'm old enough to remember the time when if you watched a weekly show, you had to wait a whole week to see the next episode, and they always left it on a cliffhanger. But now we don't have to do that. We can binge watch pretty much anything we want, whenever we want. And as someone who loves binge watching, I'm just as addicted to it as everyone else, right? We want good, fast, and cheap, and for many things that works. So there's some things that hold true for customers, such as social media. That's changed the definition of fast, you know. So when I was growing up watching a weekly television show, a week seemed like a long time. But now if I want to download a file and it takes more than 2 minutes, I'm ready to throw my laptop out the window, probably like most people, because suddenly fast suddenly becomes really super fast. So consumer technology has heightened our expectations. We're getting more accustomed to doing things for ourselves. So we want to use chatbots, we want to use WhatsApp, all of these different technologies in order to get what we need. Because humans like fast and we like convenient. Yeah, we will take convenience over most things, right? So humans, essentially customers, because they're humans, we have high expectations, and we're also quite lazy and we're quite difficult to please, right? So we are always on. We are now expecting 24/7 service. And I had this experience recently. I spend so much time on Twitter. Someone tweeted me at 3 o'clock in the morning in my time zone, and I didn't answer because I was sleeping. 6 o'clock, I had a furious DM from this individual. Why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you answering my question? And I thought, hang on a minute. We're still human, we still have to sleep. So I woke up to a barrage of DMs from someone who wanted an answer right now. And I think we expect each other to be always on, but we do need to unplug from time to time. We do channel hop, and we do this with social media as well. Our attention spans are very, very limited, and we are having to find meaningful information in a world which is blasting us with information and blasting us with data all the time. Super tough. So we're also dealing with new ways of marketing. Influencers have empowered customers, and that's something that's very, very true. So influencers are telling us which makeup to buy, which clothes to wear, and they have an authenticity to them, which is quite different from normal marketing methods. So it's quite tough, it feels organic. But sometimes it's hard to tell what's an ad and what's an influencer. So customers are wanting a bit more than that. The reality is when you sign up for a new service, the service will say, do you agree to us processing your data? And do you agree to the terms and conditions? I don't know if anyone reads the terms and conditions of anything. I think Apple's terms and conditions are maybe 45 pages long. I think you could bury a dead body in page 2 of terms and conditions. Nobody would ever find it because nobody ever reads it, right? We also expect a mobile experience. We expect to be able to see things on our mobile phones as and when we want to. So it's not just websites anymore. We have to think about designs that empower people in a very, very small space, really. So it's quite tough. There's a lot of demands that people make. So how can we bring all of this together? And what trends should we be looking for? How do we identify? Now, the thing to understand is to understand that customers are essentially human. We want everything, we want it now. We expect a personalized experience. After all, we gave you our data. You know us now, you have our data, so let's have a data-driven service. But we know that that doesn't happen. So how do we move around this? So I believe that one way of doing that is through artificial intelligence. And that's one of the great trends that we see starting to reappear again in the past few years. Now, artificial intelligence itself has been around since the 1950s. It was really devised, I think, by a gentleman called Alan Turing, who talked about the Turing test in the 1950s. I mention him specifically because my great uncle was a personal friend of his, so our background in AI goes back for a very long time. So it's not a new trend. So one key to looking at the trends is trying to work out what are we seeing again, because this time AI isn't really going away anywhere. So let's see what happens. But you're probably wondering, what do we mean by artificial intelligence? It means different things to different people. So what is artificial intelligence? It's ideally, we can think of it in the framework of, Arthur C. Clarke is a very well-known science fiction author. And he said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. He wrote a lot of science fiction films, and you probably have seen things like I, Robot and things that he wrote the stories for. So with artificial intelligence, what we do find is that it's disappearing in the background because it's coming more advanced. We're not noticing it quite as much. The AI means different things to different people. So we have different definitions. I believe that definitions are important, so we're going to have a look at this. Now, ANI is artificial narrow intelligence, and you probably carry around a bit of artificial narrow intelligence every day with you. It's in your pocket. AI is in your mobile phone, and it's very good at very narrow jobs. It's good at listening to your voice, listening to a command from you, and then executing it. Now, it's not going to make you a cup of tea, but it is going to do what you asked it to do in the way that it was designed to do it. So they can become very good at just one thing. You've got an artificial general intelligence. That's a strong intelligence. Now, we have what we call the Wozniak test. You'll know Steve Wozniak. He's one of the co-founders of Apple. Steve Wozniak talks about when artificial intelligence will be good enough for an AI machine to come into your home and make you a coffee. Now, you might think, well, we have coffee machines that do that, but I don't mean that. I mean a robot that comes into your particular house, finds your kitchen, finds the tap, finds the water, pours the right amount. Out of the hundreds of ingredients in your kitchen, finds the coffee, gives you the right amount of coffee with the right amount of grind. All of these things require a lot of contextual knowledge, and that's what's difficult to program into AI. Then we've got artificial superintelligence, the belief that AI will take over the world and we'll be living under some sort of Skynet regime. We call this a singularity. It's the stuff of Hollywood films, right? We all know this. But ultimately, when we talk about artificial intelligence in a customer context, we're thinking about artificial narrow intelligence, trying to build things like chatbots and conversational AI that can work really well in programs such as WhatsApp, as an example. So what is the objective of AI? Now, artificial intelligence, you're probably thinking, that means security, right? That means that might be a risk to me, because I'm not sure what that means. Another customer thing to watch out for is security. We give away our data so much, we just simply do. So how can we get trust? How can we gain trust as organizations that we will do the right thing with people's data? So let's look at some predictions around AI and security and what that means for customers, because this is going to be a big trend. Well, the first thing that we need to do is think about ditching passwords, right? So you're going to start to see more of that. So with one customer emerging trend, if you are building an application, you're going to have to think about, how do I engage the customer in a way that's engaging to them? And one way of doing that is biometrics. So I use my bank application, and my bank application uses my face. My face is my login. It's incredible, really, when we think about it. Now, passwords have really lulled consumers into a false sense of security. And that becomes more problematic because customers spend lots of time online. We already mentioned this. But biometric authentication can actually not only enhance security efforts, it can also enable better customer experiences, frictionless and more convenient. Like I said at the beginning, we all want convenience and we want everything just easy, right? Because we're human and we're lazy, right? So things like biometrics will lead the way to a more secure digital future, and you must put yourself in the consumer's frame of mind. How can I make them more secure? You must ask yourself that question and keep asking the question. Don't stop, because the minute you become complacent, then we're all targets, right? Our data is so valuable. In 2017, The Economist actually said that data for the first time was actually more valuable than oil. It became the most valuable asset on the planet, and that was in 2017. So to get this right, we have to think about crunching data, getting data right. So one consumer trend is to watch what customers are doing with their data. Do they trust you? How can you encourage them to trust you? We have to think about our attack surface. And we also have to think about the shortfalls in the number of skilled security professionals as well. For those of you listening who are thinking, I don't know what to do with my life, you may want to consider cybersecurity, because really there's huge shortfalls there. And the issue is, how do we overcome those as organizations to make sure we put our customers' security front and center, while also making sure that we attract the right people? Because as organizations, you really are the people that work for you. That's who your customer interacts with, and they do expect that you are going to give them a good service. So it can make more of our human skills. AI can start to disappear into the background, and it can start to become more something that automates processes, increases productivity, essentially helping the customer to be lazy, but also meaning more convenience for them as well. So these sort of things are actually really important, because what we have to do is think about that issue of empowering our customers. How can we make sure that they have a great experience with us using technology that they don't actually even understand, and nor should they? So customers themselves actually often give you our data, and we often talk about the phrase data-driven, okay? Now, I hear this a lot in business, and consumers, when we talk about them, we talk about their data. What we don't talk about enough, really, is being understanding driven. So I personally am not a huge fan of the term data-driven. I do use it, but I'm not hugely impressed with it because it's all about getting the data then and not really getting an understanding of our customers. And that's crucial regardless of the vertical that we are in. As humans, we see all the pieces together in a meaningful pattern, such as the picture on the screen at the moment. We see an image, not the little pieces. But when we talk about customers, we often hear people talking about their data, the little pieces that make up the customer. What we really want to do is really transform the business so that they become more understanding driven and insights driven about the customer. When we talk about being data-driven in an organisation, it seems a rather passive activity. We're driven by the data. However, being understanding-driven seems more of an active activity. We're driven by the data, so the data is in the driving seat. However, being understanding-driven really allows room for us to be real active participants who seek meaning, because customers essentially seek meaning from us. And they always will. And if you understand what is meaningful to your customers, that will make you more successful. Not just the data, but what it means for the customers. So in cognitive psychology, we have a term called paternicity, and that means that we look for patterns in things. So in the image here, we just don't see folded up paper, we see a book. You know, we understand we've put those components together to make a picture. Humans actively shape our surroundings around us. We shape our culture, we shape our environments. We're not passive observers. So we need to treat customers with respect. So when you look at the trends and what customers want, don't imagine for a minute they're passive observers. They're very active in their environments, and you will connect with them better if you have a better understanding of what they're looking for. You know, put all of the parts together. One thing with that is diversity and inclusion. They help us to understand through different lenses what the world actually looks like. So, for example, seatbelts for pregnant women were not designed at first. You know, seatbelts were built really for male adults, as an example, and they weren't really designed to cope with pregnancy. Years afterwards, I think it was 1997, I want to say, you know, a good 4 decades after seatbelts come out. So we have to think about what the consequences are for our consumers. They could potentially be your most valuable customer, and you don't even realize it because you're not really measuring them or listening to them properly. I'll give you an example of understanding customers. Now, you probably have heard of a children's toy called Play-Doh. Now, Play-Doh is the small squishy plasticine type balls. If you may have played with it as a child. If you're a parent, you probably have had some in the house. And if you're a grandparent, then you've maybe given some to your grandchildren, but it's such a universal toy. You pick it up, you don't need to be told what to do. You just intuitively sense what Play-Doh is for. Play-Doh, however, was invented by accident. It wasn't actually designed to be Play-Doh at all. It was originally designed to be wallpaper cleaner. Now, the two gentlemen designing Play-Doh were designing a wallpaper cleaner. At the time, wallpaper was a new invention for people's homes. It became affordable for the first time. So everyone wanted wallpaper. And these two gentlemen thought, well, let's invent a wallpaper cleaner. Now, that sounds a fantastic idea on paper, right? You know, you just think people are going to say, yep, my wallpaper is going to be dirty, I'm going to clean that. Now, fortunately or unfortunately for those two, depending how you look at it, the two gentlemen invented a wallpaper cleaner that was supposed to rub against the wall. And to be honest, it was terrible. It didn't stick. It didn't remove any grime from the wall. It was awful. And then one of the gentleman's sisters walked by and she said, she saw the rejected plastic shapes and she said, oh, the children in kindergarten would love to play with those. So she added in some food dye and took it into the children the next day. And a multi-million-dollar business was born, not because of the product, but because of the idea and the meaning that people gave to that product. I bet you can smell Play-Doh when you think about it, right? It's such a universal toy. So sometimes you can have a great product which is aimed at the wrong people, and aiming Play-Doh at children just meant that she understood better than anybody what was meaningful to the children by engaging, interacting, not collecting any data. She was just a fantastic kindergarten teacher. So that's why diversity and inclusion are so important. They help us to understand. Otherwise, if she hadn't walked by, seen these two men fail with wallpaper cleaner at that point, we might never have had Play-Doh. And personally, that sounds really tragic to me because Play-Doh is great fun, right? I think it's great toy. So having a real meaningful engagement with your customers helps you to understand their view of the world. And that really means that we can have an innovation strategy. We talk a lot about business strategies, but what does it mean to have an innovation strategy? The innovation of meaning will give your business a differentiator in business. But to do that, you have to understand your customers and you have to understand what drives them, what's meaningful and purposeful. One thing that drives me crazy is spam email, right? And I'm sure I'm not alone in spam email. When I say spam, what I mean is email that's sent to me, which is not targeted at me in any way. It's just simply an email that's gone out. It could be for any product. It could be for something like a CV review. Now, I've been in the industry for a quarter of a century. My CV is quite busy. I don't need a junior level CV review for a graduate. I employ graduates. I don't need one myself, but I still get these emails offering a CV review. And they have no understanding at all, but they just send the emails out so they hit some KPI, probably. So they're not having a meaningful relationship with me. All I do when I see the email is sigh, groan inwardly, block it, delete it, and then wait for the next one to come in because you know it's coming. So customers expect a more meaningful relationship. And they are moving to why rather than simply how. So if you've read anything by Simon Sinek, he talks a lot about understanding your why. If you haven't read anything by Simon Sinek, I recommend you go and do that. He will help you to articulate your own why. It's a great series of books. So customers are not expecting a solution anymore, like wallpaper cleaner that doesn't work very well. They're looking for meaning. And if you have that understanding-based approach to help your customers to understand, to know what's meaningful to your customers, you can align your teams towards delivering innovative solutions. And you can do that using technology, fading into the backgrounds probably, so that you can really discern what the meaning happens to be. Because now we're all members of the creative class. We talk a lot about a knowledge culture in organizations. I actually don't like knowledge culture either. I think we need to create an understanding culture, not just knowledge. Don't just accumulate knowledge and data, accumulate understanding. Stop using knowledge culture as a term, move to understanding culture. Because everybody in your organization now is a member of the creative class. Ideas are commodities, but we can't assume that having lots of ideas is going to help you find the best idea to support your customers and your vision. So in the same way, having lots of ideas and lots of data may not lead to the best, most meaningful ideas for your customers. And what gives you the best idea for your customer? It's meaning. And the best ideas are meaningful, authentic, and part of a bigger vision. And if you can focus on the meaning, you've found the trends for your customers. And think about people in terms of their membership of that creative class. How can you get the technical teams involved, for example, and be part of that understanding culture? So what we can do is think about how we manage data, how we take care of it, and how it passes around the organization. When you start to encourage horizontal collaboration right from the start, then that really encourages your organization to think more about being innovative. It's very hard to tell from data what exactly customers want sometimes, but trying to think about the way forward for your customers is incredibly powerful and important. So to summarize, we want to think about people as being part of that creative class in your teams. Think about that innovation strategy. How can you encourage innovation? And how can you help people to speak up and speak out if they've got an idea? And even if it's a bad idea, it's a start. And then perhaps you can encourage that collaboration to help people to think about what makes a better idea and how that can start to look forward. Is when we start to think about it, we can think about how we can onboard artificial intelligence successfully for our organizations. Lots that you can do. You can think about if you're building an app, how do I use biometrics? We know that's coming down the pipe. Internet of Things, what devices could you perhaps get data from? As long as it's meaningful, using data just for the sake of data is maybe not going to tell you anything. People have serious data FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. I better collect all the data in case something's in it that I'm missing. If you're randomly collecting data, you're just randomly collecting data. Where do you start to look for it? And where do you start to try and analyze it? It can be really tough, actually. You can spend lots of time going down rabbit holes. Believe me, it's something I do quite a bit. You want to onboard AI successfully for your organization. So start simple, start small, and most of all, more than anything else, put your people first. Okay, your people are your business. They will help you to understand your customers better, listen to them. They live and they breathe working with your customers. We can do all sorts of things to try and encourage people to speak up and speak out. We can also think about not just the people who work for you, but your partners, your suppliers, your vendors, your customers, obviously, but the wider ecosystem that you work in. So we have to think about how we can be part of the society as well that we live in. So I think by being authentic and thinking about ethics, your why will start to come out of that. Why are you in business? Who do you want to help? And what's meaningful to customers that you can make their lives more convenient, easy, and encourage them to be lazy because you're not introducing any friction at all. So with that summary, I just want to say thank you all for joining. I don't know if there's any questions, but I'm happy to take any questions at the moment.
Oh, yes, there are questions. Of course, there are questions after this fascinating story. Absolutely. In fact, I would like to start with one of mine, if you don't mind me asking. You mentioned the change from knowledge culture to understanding culture. How do we go about it? When shall we start teaching our kids how to do the shifting on this matter? Do you have ideas on this?
Yeah, I do actually. I think listening is so important. I know I've just spoken for almost half an hour, right? So I haven't been listening. But I think listening is such an underrated skill. And I have been spending days, for example, with a particular customer. And one of them said one thing that really interested me. And what made me realize is that she'd summarized in a really nice point a lot of the problems that the organization had been having. And nobody had mentioned this, right? And this woman had basically sat with her camera off for about 2 days and not really said very much. And I got the impression that she, I guess maybe she'd worked there for a long time. Maybe just people weren't listening anymore. And sometimes You can be the Cassandra in an organization. So Cassandra is the Greek myth where Cassandra was destined to tell the truth, but have nobody believe her. And so what you can do is encourage your Cassandras in the organization. They're not always the nicest people. Sometimes they have years of anger to deal with, frustration. They care, but no one's listening. So if you can empower people like that to speak up and speak out, they will be able to help you to have a better understanding of what's really going on in the organization.
Fantastic. I have several questions here as well. Let's go over as quickly as we possibly can because we're running out of time. But how to measure, understand, and influence buying behavior?
Yeah, now influence is something that I think people are still trying to measure. They're normally doing it through social media, clicks and KPIs and metrics and click-throughs. So that's one way that you can do it. But I think influence itself has to have more longevity. I think it comes from integrity. So if you're the sort of influencer who's covered in labels, then you are as expendable as those labels. But I think if you let your own truth shine out and show that you're a person of integrity, this is what you believe. And sometimes that means saying things that people don't expect. But if you can, I think sometimes these human principles of integrity and having very simple messaging can really help as well. But you do have to live what you believe. So, for example, I'm speaking at a green sustainability conference next year. I'm going to do it remotely. I'm not going to fly. So, because I could, right? Because I'm at the conference, but it doesn't sit well because it's not part of the story that I want to give. So I think people watch that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please. In talking about the pandemic, we have several questions about it, by the way, and I'm pretty sure that it's still very much on people's minds. Will habits formed during the crisis continue, or will people return to their old routines once conditions change?
I think people will do whichever's easiest for them. So I think it takes about 20 iterations for you to form a habit, is the thumb in the ear sort of guideline. I don't know if that's true or not, finger in the ear. But I think some people will not go back to the office, for example, because it's more convenient to stay at home, saves them money. I don't know about you, but I certainly paid off all my credit cards not having to travel. So that was great. Not that I had loads, but it was good to get rid of them. So I think people will honestly do whatever's easiest. We all have an excuse now to say, well, I don't want to go in the office because of COVID, because of the latest variant. So I think that's what will happen. It's given us new excuses to do the things that are right for us, and maybe that's a good thing.
Right. What type of business promotion is the most effective during post-COVID-19 environment?
I think it's about I think word of mouth, to be honest. So I must admit I'm terrible at marketing. I never do it. I never send out adverts, letters. I never buy Google ads. I never do anything like that. Now maybe I should, right? There's marketers out there thinking, oh my goodness, it sounds terrible. But I'm more busy and end up passing work to other people. And so, to make the customer happy, it's not that I don't want to work with them. I just think I know I'm not going to deliver to their timescales. Us as a team need to give that to someone else. And the customer is, I think, more grateful if you do that because you've been honest and you have made sure that their requirements and commitments are kept rather than taking the work and then not delivering it. So I think, honestly, integrity and making a success of every customer project that you do is the right thing to do, because you should be delivering your current work thinking about your future customers, because your current work will act as a reference for what happens afterwards. So you serve the customers you see now, but you're also thinking about the future customers that are going to come your way.
Got it. What features attract a consumer to the products?
I think it was most of all is meaning. Really finding a purpose in things. So say, for example, if you start to understand really your customer, understand not just what makes them tick, but what makes their lives a bit easier. I'll give you an example. I have got a thermostat at home. Every year the heating comes on and I have to try and work out how to program the thermostat. Now the thermostat's about 7 years old, right? Every 7 years, I pull out my hair because it's painful and difficult to use, and I dread it. So what happens is I set it to the default position because it has a million different combinations. The manual is long gone, and it's just hard, you know. So sometimes I'm in my house sweating beads because it's too high or I'm freezing, and then I have to do everything manually. So it doesn't make my life easier. And when you look at something like Google Nest makes your life easy, right? You know, you just basically tell Google to turn the temperature up and it does it. And I should get myself one of those. But again, the inventors of Nest found what was meaningful, that basically something as ugly as a thermometer could be made into something quite beautiful. And it could also be make people's lives easier. So I think when you're thinking about innovation, nothing's off the table. Even your ugly thermometer at home, there's room for improvement there.
Understood. Well, unfortunately, this is all the time that we have today. I would like to thank Jen so much for this fascinating topic that we just we heard, and we're looking forward to the next workshops here on Pitch to Scale. So please tune in. We're going to have workshops during the whole day today and tomorrow. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. All right.